Namaste. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Violeta Stoica, and I'm an Adlerian psychotherapist licensed in Romania. And my main activity as a level 2 QHHD hypnosis practitioner in Dolores Cannon School. Currently undertaking the level 3. I'm in the process of becoming one at the beginning of this process. But I just want to say that Dolores Cannon touched my life, and I am so deeply grateful and honored to continue her work. This is something that tremendously changed my life, and I'm very, very grateful to her for touching my life in that way. So, with this being said, I am going to tell you that today I'm going to talk about childhood traumas and their healing through a technique I have created over the years of work in psychotherapy and hypnosis and a bit of shamanic work, a method I have been using for some time with good results. This is um, a distinct session called Inner Child Healing that I've been doing for the past years. This is apart from my psychotherapy work and my hypnosis work, which is my main thing that I do, the QHHD. So, in my experience of over 12 years of working with people, I think I've met only one person who was genuinely happy with her childhood, who had come out of it absolutely untouched, a childhood in which emotionally all of our needs were met. The rest of those who came to me were left with consequences, to put it mildly. The overwhelming majority of people, whether they are aware of it or not, have experienced less pleasant, even traumatic moments in childhood. And this is a matter of perception. So I'm not bringing this subject up to identify with the energy of the victim because we don't want to go there. On the contrary, because it is beneficial to be aware of the traumas we carry with us. Why is it necessary to be aware of those traumas? Because everything we repress, in addition to making us sick, consumes a large part of the energy that we could otherwise recover and use creatively for what we need to build the life we want. So, to understand what trauma means and how they are created in children, let's take a look at humans as beings on the scale of evolution. All of the mammals on Earth have a less long childhood. Man has the longest childhood. When a foal is born, it rises almost immediately to its feet. It takes a child a whole year to walk. At least 18 years pass until we reach adulthood. But the human body reaches its peak at only 26 years of age when it completely stops growing, when the personality is formed, and from here it enters a descending slope that goes until the end of life. Why do you think it takes us so long to grow up? It's due to the complexity of the human body, but mainly due to the complexity of our brain. We have the most complex brain of all the beings, physical beings, I mean, on earth. At birth, we come without a conscious mind because the cerebral cortex is not yet fully formed. It is only around the age of 7 that it forms, 6 or 7. Until then, children have no filter, and absolutely everything they see and everything they live goes unfiltered directly into the subconscious mind. There is another aspect totally neglected by the society. The fact that most of the time children up to 6 years of age live in the brain waves called theta, where they are emitted by the brain and during the hypnotic trance. What does that mean? It translates into the fact that they are always in a trance state, and that is why all the information received by all means reaches the subconscious. They cannot rationalize or filter. They cannot refuse a certain information. Unable to refuse it, they suppress it if they don't like it or if it's too painful. Adults suppress and repress emotions. Children only suppress them. The difference lies in the state of consciousness. Children not having the conscious mind, they suppress what happens in an automatic way, unconsciously. Adults can also repress, which is the conscious mechanism to refuse the feeling of an emotion and consequently to send it to the subconscious. They refuse to feel an emotion for the simple fact that it is unpleasant, such as the pain felt when losing a loved one, when losing a job, after a divorce, after an accident, and so on. Because emotions are a form of energy, the suppressed and the repressed emotions are stored in the body, more precisely in the muscles and fascia. The fascia is the covering of the muscles, the membranes that delimit the muscles. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's look into what trauma is. So, another aspect of the childhood is that everything children live, it actually gets absorbed. And as I said before, everything without discernment, without filtering, goes in the subconscious where a database is created automatically. So, what I'm trying to say is this is how we were created as human beings. This is how our brain and our mind works. It's not the children's fault. It's nobody's fault that we function in that way. There are certain characteristics about children's brain, and I'll get into some of that a bit later. But going back to what I was saying, around the age of 6 and 7 years old, the conscious mind has been created, and it will start using this database. In that database, there are, in addition to everything that happened to the child, all their beliefs about themselves, about others, about men and women in general, and about life in general. These beliefs are conclusions that children reached as a result of various events and situations that they themselves experienced, that they have witnessed, or they have learned about from various sources. Through this mechanism, children, excuse me, through this mechanism, children learn to survive because this is what they do in childhood. They survive. And because the rational mind doesn't exist yet, they don't understand the circumstances behind what's happening. So they draw some conclusions about themselves in that circumstance, conclusions that will define them for the rest of their lives. These conclusions are the landmarks that stay at the foundation of their personality. This is how the personality is created. And that is why in different incarnations, we have different personalities because they are based on beliefs formed in various experiences. The main thing I look for in an inner child healing session is the child's perception. I'm not interested in what happened, but the child's perception. Later, as adults, people are guided by these childhood conclusions, sometimes to old age without realizing it. This state of unconsciousness, fortunately, in recent years is beginning to disappear, especially in today's young adults, due to the fact that the collective vibration of mankind has begun to raise and spirituality has taken an unprecedented advantage, perhaps since the Renaissance. Later in life, whenever we encounter a similar situation to something we lived up to 7 years of age, the brain will react to it with an emotion already existing in the database. And that happens because there are some principles in the functioning of the brain. As I said, we came, we come with a set of laws or regulations of the brain. One of them is to consume less energy. So instead of creating a new reaction to that situation, the mind will go into the database formed in the first 6 years of life and will extract a reaction that it was learned back in those years, and it will display it at the moment. Isn't that interesting how we function? But as we understand these mechanisms, because there are a few, then it's easier to navigate our feelings and our inner landscape. Once we learn and understand how it functions, then we can take charge. We can be in control of our minds. So, going back to what I was saying, children are very good observers, but terrible interpreters because they do not understand the circumstances behind their parents' behavior and their emotional reactions. For example, they take in these behaviors and emotional reactions of the adults they grew up with, and then they come to believe that these behaviors are theirs, even though they belong to their parents. And another mechanism specific to childhood is this: as the children absorb all they see, all the behaviors and emotional reactions of the adults they grow up with, not that they only take them in, they integrate them. That means it's more than they make it their own. They think that this is who they are. They integrate that behavior and then they identify with it. And that's another thing that we have to undo as adults. So children think that this is who they are. These reactions, these emotions, these thoughts that they've learned and absorbed in childhood, they think that's their identity. So, and maybe I'll make another video about this aspect of psychology, astrology, and shadow work because it's so interesting and it's so much to talk about. But let's get back to what I was saying. So, especially children will integrate the behavior of the strongest parent who gets what they want from others, or a model that impresses or marks them. And this way, the adults are becoming one of the two kinds of parents, some who follow the style of their own parents, and those who choose to become the exact opposite of what their parents were. So, how do we get out of this vicious cycle in which we react with exactly or similar reactions to our parents? Through introspection and working with ourselves, through hypnosis, which is the shortcut. And this is what we're doing now. We're talking about it, we're learning about it, we're dissecting the mechanisms of the brain and of the mind so we better understand how they work, and then we can take charge. And in the inner child healing session, I do a light trance just to get access to those programs in the childhood that we've taken on in the childhood. So, there are some scientifically proven certainties about the parent child relationship, and that is all parents love their children. This is a fact, it's proven scientifically. Mothers are endowed with maternal instinct, and there is only one exception to the rule, and they are schizophrenic mothers. They are themselves people in their own inner suffering, and they cannot understand the physical nor the emotional needs of others, and therefore not of their children. The difference is that some parents do not show their love in the exact way their children need it. And one more thing, usually children need to be shown love in order to learn to express it themselves in turn. But this is in a general way. It's not 100% um, like that. Some kids that don't receive love will be the very loving parents sometimes, because remember I told you the two type of parents that we become, the ones that step into their parents type of parenting, and the other that choose to be the exact opposite. So the ones that choose to be the exact opposite might be very loving even though they didn't receive love. But there are people that if they didn't receive love, they don't know how to express it, they don't know how to show it, and that of course brings unmet needs in children, and that leaves them with marks. So if we had parents without emotional intelligence, it is very likely that we were not understood emotionally. Our emotional needs were not met by our parents. And who knew about emotional intelligence in our parents' time? Almost no one. But in turn, they did not receive love as they needed. No one taught them how to express their love and other emotions properly. So they did not know. The definition of the emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive emotions, to access and generate emotions, and reflectively regulate emotions. So, the regulating part is very important in adults. Due to the unmet physical and emotional needs, and due to the experiencing certain situations and their way of perception, the overwhelming majority of children came out of childhood scarred and carried with them these painful memories. The Native American shamans of our time believed that it is not beneficial to perceive ourselves as victims of our parents, but rather honor them, thanking them for the role they have played in our lives. All children suffer less or greater trauma because we are all victims of other victims. And so hurtful behavioral patterns are being perpetuated. We, who are aware of these things, can interrupt these series of traumas through the ability of changing the old perspective and forming a new one that we now integrate into our psyche and through which we break the pattern inherited from parents. So, what is exactly trauma? There are several definitions of trauma. Trauma is not just about living through a natural cataclysm or sexual abuse. Trauma can also be a visit to the doctors in which the child is very scared and feels helpless because he cannot control what's happening. It can be a vicious remark from a colleague or a teacher, or a situation in which the child felt unprotected or even abused by the very parent that was supposed to defend them, feeling betrayed. Children can feel betrayed by the bystanding parent that didn't interfere and stopped the abuse caused by the other parent or another adult. Betrayal is a serious trauma. So it is exposure to sexually explicit images, allusions, exposure to pornography, witnessing another person's sexual act or sexual harassment. The beating is emotionally traumatic, an accident, even the trauma experienced by a character in a book. That's very interesting, isn't it? Well, I worked with someone who had the perception that she was not loved and did not receive the attention that she needed from her parents. So we decided together that she should benefit from an inner child healing session. In the session, we both discovered with surprise that she was living the drama of a character from a children's book who was in that situation. It was a little boy being in a foster home where he wasn't loved, where he didn't receive the attention, and he felt unseen, unheard, and unloved. So the woman I was working with identified with that child and projected this identification into her own reality as a child. Isn't that interesting? So she believed and felt the emotions of that boy's character, took it in, integrated it, made it her own, and ended up believing that was her experience of childhood. Very, very interesting. Not coincidentally, a few years back, before she came to me for the inner child healing session, she found that book in a bookstore and bought it. She tried to reread it several times and could not get past the first few pages. And this was one of her dearest books from the childhood. Of course, it was close to her heart because she lived that drama. So, as she couldn't read it, then she realized in the inner child healing session that she was living that boy's life. So, in that session, I detached her from that story completely. And later on, I suggested her to burn the book on a full moon night, and she did. So let's see how to recognize the signs of trauma. And these are as follows: excessive upset, unusual shivering reactions, loss of appetite, extreme fatigue, physical or verbal aggression, regular delay or absence from class, perfectionism, controlling or anxious behavior, difficulty concentrating, frequent headaches or stomach pain, low self esteem, irritability, bitterness, difficulty making friends, self harm or suicidal ideation, grabbing, risky behaviors, including drug, alcohol abuse, or sexual behavior, panic attacks, which we know are very common, extremely high self confidence, the opposite of the low self esteem, right? So, extremes, watch for those. Flight, defiance, alienation of colleagues. As I have said before, emotions are energy, and if we do not manage them in a healthy way when they arise, but rather we repress them, then they accumulate in our body. The energy of the trauma is stored in the tissues of our body, mainly in the muscles and fascia, as I said before, until it can be released. This trauma kept in the body usually leads to pain, which is usually the first body signal that something is wrong, and progressively erodes the health of our bodies. Usually, traumatized people do not stay in the body because it is not a comfortable place to feel safe. They escape from the body through various mechanisms, such as addictions of any kind, including work addictions. These people do everything not to stay in their body. And we all know someone like that. Always busy, 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 never stopping. They keep themselves busy just to not face their thoughts and emotions. These are the people that have a lot on their minds and that they're never grounded. In order to stay in the body, we need to be grounded. In order to manage and feel the emotions, we need to stay in the body. So we breathe consciously, we slow down the pace in everything we do. We do things more slowly and, very importantly, in a state of presence. When we eat, we close our eyes and feel and enjoy the tastes and the flavors of what we eat. Chew slowly and take breaths between swallowings. Movement is also very important, and stretching also, stretching the muscles and the fascia, walking, running, jogging, dancing, yoga, going to the gym, massage or self massage, applying lotion on the skin, looking in the mirror and admiring ourselves, talking nicely with our body parts. Stretch your body every morning and every evening by practicing light stretching to lengthen our limbs. We also help digestion and release tension. So, what is to be done if we carry the past childhood trauma? And this is important because this is the defense mechanism that is used by the majority of people. I'm confident when I say this that the majority of people carry traumas from their childhood, and the majority of them deny it. So, over the years, I have come up with my own technique in which I have combined hypnosis, psychotherapy, drama therapy, and shamanic techniques to help people who carry childhood traumas and who now return to the surface, not in the form of memories, although they can manifest as such, but especially in the forms of blockages in different areas of their lives. Sometimes those who come for a hypnosis session can be aware, or they can have that in their hypnosis sessions. And QHHD taught us how to deal with them if they come up in a QHHD session. But what I'm talking now about is a specific separate session that is much shorter, in a shallow level of trance, a superficial one. And this is where we address solely the known or the unknown traumas of the childhood. And if they come up in a QHHD session, the higher self takes care of it and heals it. And in the inner child healing session, it's a process that it takes the person back into their childhood in certain memories or spontaneous memories. I cannot say ahead of time how a session will work, but I developed a protocol, a strategy to reach those memories and those traumas. So, if you resonated with this and you're interested in one of those sessions, you can reach me through my website, which is www.initiaticjourney.com. I will put the website address in the first comment under my video so you can reach me and you can see the spelling. I thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to hit the bell to get notified for the newest videos. Namaste. I hope to see you on my next videos. Until then, stay in the light. Thank you very much for watching.